Okay, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining the Vamos Rundown. It's a pleasure today. We have Matt Daniels. If you're familiar with ultra trail running and just running in general, you know who Matt is. He has a very unique story in the sport. He's one of the very few to run, sub 4 minutes in the mile, which is amazing. And it kind of says a lot about your capacity because you go from running a sub 4 minute mile to tackling 100 milers. And it seems like you just have a ton of passion for trails and just ultra distances. So I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more and kind of learn more about that. So yeah, thanks for joining, man. I appreciate the time.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat. I know, I listened to your pod the other day with Jeremy, I believe, and I'm stoked to be on and looking forward to catching up and stuff. So it'll be good.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Shout out Jeremy. Thank you for making the connection with Matt. I mean, I probably would have, knocked on your door anyways, but it's always cool. And again, thanks again for being so welcoming and open to the conversation. So
of course, yeah.
So let's touch a little bit about into it. Just, you live in Boulder, Colorado. That's just like an endurance athlete's kind of playground. And I would just mention to you that my sister lives over there. So I actually have ran a little bit out there, and, it's a cool environment. One, you have an amazing playground, but you have a ton of other endurance athletes, whether, you're running on trails, a cyclist, just hiking, whatever it may be. I mean, you take your pickings out there. And I love what you guys have going on with the Boulder Boys. I've been following that as well. So do you kind of want to touch on, what that seems like out there?
Yeah, definitely. Boulder. I mean, I'm sure, people have heard on all sorts of podcasts. It's an incredible place to be an endurance athlete. And like you said, it is a playground. Even right now we're underneath so much snow, and it's still just like, I can't wait to get up in the mountains and, you see your friends out there just post-holing through the trails. Like it's a great place to be all year round. It's funny enough. I actually came out to Boulder as a road athlete. I joined a road running group out here, and that's kind of what brought me into Boulder. Before that, I was in Alamosa, Colorado, down in southern Colorado, going to school there, and then running post-collegiately on the roads. I came out here and started training with Brad Hudson and getting ready for the marathon and that sort of thing, and then found my way onto the trails as a lot of road athletes do. And a lot of that was just, when you have trails right out your back door, you can't help but to get out on them and do some of your runs on those. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And the rest was history. So yeah, it's a cool place to be. And then luckily, we have a pretty close-knit community here. And I got some really good friends and training partners in the Boulder Boys with Seth and Adam Mary. He just moved, but going to be visiting quite often. And then Drew Holman and Moy. And it's a good time out here.
Cool. Yeah, I hear that you guys are all getting together coming up in a few weeks, right, at Black Canyon. So that will be a good I mean, you see most of the guys, but it sounds like there'll be a mini reunion of, a lot of your close buddies.
Definitely. And it's been kind of a crazy beginning to the year because Adam had just moved to Maine, and Moy has been out in Chile for a month. And then Drew's been busy with a lot of life stuff and work. And so Seth and I have just kind of been here holding down the fort, and it'll be fun to kind of all get together in a place like Black Canyon. I think we got a pretty sweet house. Hopefully it's warm enough. There's a pool there. We'll have a little pool party. I don't know. It'll be a good time. So
nice.
Out there.
Yeah, Jeremy kind of he encouraged me, and I pulled the trigger. So I ended up getting a flight out there. So look, I'm looking forward just to spectating, just hanging out for the weekend, and I think it's going to be a fun event. There'll be a lot of great races going on, of course, in the 100K, but I think the 50K is going to be super competitive as well. So super looking forward to that, man.
Yeah, great. I'm gonna be out there.
Are you running in that race, or are you just kind of hanging out?
Yeah, I was planning on it. I'm kind of taking my time this year because a lot of the races I really want to do well at this year or later in the summer and into the fall. And so I've been kind of dealing with a little bit of a niggle. I'm healthy now, but kind of set me back. And so I'm just going to be out there spectating. I have a lot of athletes racing, so I'll be, the coaching hat will be on, and then I may be helping out with free trail with some of the commentating and stuff too. So it'll be a good time.
Cool, man. Well, if there's time for it, we definitely need to connect when we're out there. So that'd be cool.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I took a look at your blog. I've read a ton of it, and dude, you're an amazing writer. So it was super captivating and intriguing for me. A lot of the topics that you touch on are stuff that like I'm really kind of just resonate with me as a person. So where did that writing kind of passion come from, that background? Is it something you've always done? Do you want to touch a little bit on that?
Gosh, yeah. It's not something. I mean, I've always like written. I've had personal journals, and I have a handwritten running log that I continue to use. I've like had a handwritten running log since I've been 11 years old. So every run I've ever logged is handwritten into a journal, and that turns into you start writing about your day and that sort of thing too. But
yeah.
I never really got into like at school when you're forced to write. I couldn't stand it. It's more kind of for me very therapeutic, and it's like probably how a lot of runners are, that like they like to get out and run, but they don't like to have to train hard or try and be elite. They just like the motion of going out and running and being in the wilderness. And that's kind of how I am with writing. And so that's why my blog is kind of sparse. Like it's usually, I only write when it's like, I really feel like something needs to be put out there. I have a lot of handwritten stuff that I do personally. But yeah, I think, I've always had a hard time expressing what's on my mind with words publicly, and like, just kind of getting that across. And it's always been easier for me to just kind of write it out and then go back and reread it, review it, and then put it out there. And so that's something I enjoy doing, and I'll probably continue to do that in some form or fashion. But I think where I get hung up is like I can never like write for a publication or anything like that. It doesn't appeal to me. It's kind of just my own little thing I enjoy doing. So I appreciate you reading it, and and that that's the point of having the blog, is there's certain things that I like to just kind of put out there in the universe, and I feel like can help people, inspire people, and when that comes to mind, it's like, okay, here we go. Let's put it out there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's super cool. One, like I mentioned, I mean, it's actually really intriguing writing. That's I'm drawn to it, but at the same time, from a therapeutic standpoint, they talk about journaling and just the benefits of that, and you could see that aspect of it. I actually through my employer, we have a free therapist that's available, so I just kind of went to go see them for therapeutic measures, and they kind of got me on the track of journaling. So I'm a big behind journaling, man. So at the end here, I won't throw it out now, but there's a cool quote from one of your entries that I kind of want to touch on, but I think it'll be good to close this thing out. So we'll wait for that. Put that on pause.
Cool.
So cool, man. So switching back to your running journey, kind of what influenced, because you were tremendous speed on the track, of course, cross, roads. When did that kind of shift towards the trails take place, and what inspired that? Because it seems like you do have a lot of passion for the trails. So if you want to touch a little bit on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. Even I guess when I was a road and track athlete, even living in Texas, I would always go seek any sort of trail or off-road type running I could. My training partner and best friend growing up, we would always just like wander off into the woods or go to a housing development and make sure we could like find dirt, or in the wilderness and run. And that's just the type of training I always really enjoyed. And then, as I got older and more competitive, you have to get a little bit more, specific to what you're training for, and especially at the elite level. And so that I didn't really get to spend as much time on the trails later in my career. But then when I moved to Boulder, in Colorado specifically, it was kind of like I couldn't help myself. And so I find myself back out there. But honestly, the real push came from three different people, essentially. I would say, so right after the Olympic trials in 2016, the Marathon Olympic trials, I kind of took a little hiatus, a little break, and then came back and started training for the next training cycle, whatever. I think I was going to try and get on the track that summer. And instead, Andy Wacker had kind of convinced me to go run the U.S. mountain running champs. And so I was like, okay, I'll give that a shot. Like I was pretty burned out on the roads at the time. And so, I went out there and made a world team. And at the same time, it's kind of funny. It was like the trail gods were trying to get me on the trails, because around the same time I was actually living in Evergreen, training in Boulder, and a good friend, Travis Macy, who was living in Evergreen, he's a legend in the trail world in the U.S. too. Was kind of pushing me to get on the trails a little bit more too, and was going on some runs with him, and so I was kind of catching the bug there. And then, where I went to college at Adams State, the great Pablo Vigil went there, and he's won Sierras and all like 5 times. He's probably people who watch this podcast may have seen him in some of the old Killing Quest videos with Killian Jornet. And Pablo's a legend in the sport, and I've always been very inspired by how he navigated training throughout his whole career in the 60s and early 70s, and then kind of found himself, going from the track to the roads to the trails, and that I always kind of knew in my heart that's something I wanted to do. And he's been a really good mentor and close friend of mine. His birthday is actually tomorrow, so happy birthday, Pablo! If you do listen.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, I think just having that in my ear, and then the final push being Andy being like, man, just go run the mountain champs and see what happens. And so, funny enough, Addie Bracey was also on my road running team, and she was kind of going through the same thing. We were both burned out after the Olympic trials, and Hayden Hawks was there for a training camp, kind of figuring out if he was going to join our team. And we all 3 were like, okay, let's just go do it and see what happens. And we all 3 made the world team, and it was kind of all over from there. Like, we are trail runners now, and I fell in love with the community and just kind of everything about it. And so, yeah, haven't looked back since then.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I mean, definitely not on your level, but I'm the same way. I was a kind of a track road guy, and I grew up just with my parents on hikes. We'd always be camping. So I think now when I realize, hey, I can't keep up with these 22-year-olds anymore or something like that. I just naturally said, it gave me a new sense of life. Let me see what my ceiling is right now. That's what I love about the trails, but also just the love of it. Every time, you're just out there, you just love it. You love the challenges of it too, which is awesome, because there's so much variation in it that I love. It's a totally different sport, so.
Yeah, that's really true. And that's something I've actually been kind of thinking about a lot lately, and actually kind of wanting to write just to get it out there. But that's the coolest thing about trail is I feel like there's just so many layers to it. And no matter what kind of person or athlete you want to be, you can go explore these new layers. I'm wildly interested in doing a 200 just to see what is that like, and what is that whole experience going to be like. And the cool thing is no matter if it's a 50K or a uphill mountain race for 10K or a 200-mile race, it's all running, and it's all in nature, and it's just kind of moving through the mountains is something I absolutely love doing. And so it's a unique sport. I think it's cool how everybody that's in it finds their way in it for different reasons, but then we all get to kind of enjoy the same thing and can all relate on some sort of level.
Cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's awesome. This will be a good transition too. I actually watched a documentary of you deep in the archives, dude. So it's a throwback. It's the Sub 4 to States. Dude, yeah. That is a hidden gem. That's one of the better documentaries I've watched. And I just like to kind of nerd out and watch some cool stuff on trail running and stuff. But I cannot believe I've never came across that until this past week. And I was like, dude, that's a super awesome document. That was well put together too.
Yeah. I appreciate it. It was really cool because Rob Steger put it together, and at the time I think he was the only one who kind of for some reason saw something in me, saw that I was gonna maybe pop off in 2019, and we started recording before I even got my golden ticket at Black Canyon, and I think it was just crazy how you kind of took that chance on getting some footage, and then we were out at Western States and filmed that, and then it was just kind of all came together. And it was cool because actually that same year he was going for the Triple Crown in 200, so I got to be a part of it, and they did a big I think Amazon Prime documentary on him doing that, if you haven't seen that. So it was we were both kind of able to be in each other's documentaries and help each other out and that sort of thing. But he did an amazing job with that, and it was fun to be a part of.
Dude, super awesome documentary. I think what got me too, what they captured really well in that documentary was just like the passion and emotion that you showed. And I think that says a lot about you as a person. And I mean, I don't like know you in that sense, but I think they captured it. And how do you think they captured that? Like, was that authentically you? I mean, I felt like it was.
Yeah. The funny thing was when I watched it for the first time, I didn't watch any clips. I just like sat down and watched the whole movie all at once for the first time at like a video showing we did at a run store. And so I was like quite embarrassed initially when it all came out, because I was like, kind of crying on part of it, and then like on the verge of death at the end of that race, like, shaking profusely, wanting to vomit. And then, but it was cool because during all that, I had no idea any of that was being filmed at the time. Like, I had no idea there was a camera on me. And so it was very authentic, very like, it was cool to go back and watch, because I think a lot of times we get caught up in it, like in our own race, in our own head of everything going on, but we never really get to kind of like step out and look at like the big picture of the whole journey of a 100-mile race. And really, it felt cool to like get to see it, I guess, from the perspective of a lens rather than, in my own head, where it felt kind of different, I guess, when I was doing it. Elite athletes or any athlete, we're really hard on ourselves. And so like throughout the whole race, all I was thinking was like, man, like I've blown it. Like I'm not going to be top 3 or whatever, and it was cool to go back and watch and see like, that was actually a pretty special day. Like,
oh yeah,
I was so hard on myself that whole time, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, won the field stack, but then it was your first 100-miler too. And I actually just did my first 100-mile this past year, and that shit is a beast, dude. It's just like you think you're doing so well, and then all of a sudden it's just like, nope, you have like 3 more chapters left that you have to get through.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing about ultras and 100s specifically, is that there's just so many elements to it, and that's what makes it unique and fun. And which 100 did you do?
It was Folsom 100. So you go around all of Folsom Lake. You pretty much, and it was a terrible weather, dude. It was like that May storm. I don't know if you're familiar, but there was a storm that came through in May, and it was like randomly cold, super windy. And just really bad. It was the same weekend as Miwok, so it was just like, it was pretty challenging. So it had a lot of just different nuance and factors that were working against me, but I got through it. So
good on you for getting through it. That's awesome. That's always a win, getting through that first 100.
yeah, for sure. Cool, man. So like, let's keep reminiscing a bit. 2019. You got that golden ticket. 100K, you run Western States. Now, like, it seems like on paper that you nailed that season. Where were you at just from a training aspect, and then just mentally, because your mindset has to be pretty dialed in. Were those working in your favor that year? What, could you touch on that?
Yeah, it was weird. I was recently married, so I had that going for me. Newlywed, life was good. My coaching business was starting to take off. So like for the first time in my life, I was starting to like have an income. Like I wasn't like relying on my parents to help me out or whatever. And so that felt good. Running was going really well. I think every race I ran that year, with the exception of Western States, I think I won or set a course record at one of, I think Bandera, I got a concussion, so I DNF'd. But outside of that, everything was like clicking. And the crazy part was, I remember through training that whole year, in 2019, I was working with David Roach, and he was like holding me back. Like I was doing significantly less volume and intensity than I had ever done in my entire running career. It was more just kind of like getting used to the trails and getting used to this new scene. And then, I somehow, was just running really well. I think a lot of it, a lot of people can relate to this, is when you're in a good headspace, like running is going to go well no matter how hard or little you're training. And so I think that's where, once I got some momentum early in the year, it just kind of kept snowballing. Like it just kept going. It was great. And after Western States, I did lose a race. I ran North Face after Western States, and or maybe it was Sierras and all, or maybe both. It was either one of those races, and I was so cooked. I had no business at all.
Yeah.
After Western States. I mean, I think that race in particular, I didn't realize it at the time, but it it like did a number on me where it took me a long time to feel like a normal runner again. Like I went really deep in that race, and I never, going deep in a race before that for me is just like running really hard. And at Western States, you're not running very fast or anything, but it's just the accumulation of the vert and the heat, and then lack of nutrition for 15 hours. It's like on your endocrine system in your body, and that it spends a lot of time that winter after Western States really just trying to like recover and figure out like, okay, am I ever going to be the same again, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I'm sure on the mental side, even like your mental capacity, just probably has to even drain some of that just because of your aspiration to achieve the next thing. It's just not quite at that level as it is chasing for a Western States,
Totally. And that was another thing that was really hard. I just signed, like I was running for Nike, but it was just like when I ran Western States, it was just for gear, essentially. I think I had a small bonus structure. But I wasn't getting paid at all. And then I just signed my first like contract right after Western States going into 2020. So I was like fired up to like get back into some pretty high profile races and stuff. But I also knew like, man, my body's not there right now. And so I was really like playing tug of war with myself and my emotions. And it was hard to deal with. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, great. What are we supposed to do now? So yeah.
Well, it's still something that you should be extremely proud of. I mean, you're still one of the top in the sport. I mean, you have had solid races after that. So, and I'm sure you have a ton ahead of you. I mean, you're still I would consider in your prime for, this sport. So I'm looking forward just to seeing what the future looks like. So, for 2025, and I mean, this could be open-ended. It doesn't have to be like running related, but just kind of what are you looking forward to most in 2025?
Yeah, I am going to try and make this the year of like figuring out long mountain races. It's something I'm just so passionate about. And I think I have a lot of like natural leg speed, and I think that gets me in trouble in some of these longer races, especially vert races that are long. And so just kind of like really focusing on being more up in the mountains this year, some high altitude running. I have some great races lined up, and then just kind of outside of running, just focusing on being more authentically me. I think I got caught up over like after my surgery and injury and stuff, I got really caught up in trying to be the type of athlete and person that I felt like brands wanted me to be, just so I could like make sure I was still signing that deal and making that money. And at the end of the day, it's like, that's not why I run. And it was really showing in my performance, like high profile performances, when I wasn't like being authentic to who I was. And so I think I'm going to continue on in 2025, really trying to lean into that and, make sure if I am going to work with anybody, any partnerships, it's with a company that I really value and trust, and they value me, and they're good people. And, everything about it is just like what I'm all about. And I think that's going to carry over to kind of everything else in life too. Whether that's like with coaching or my relationships or anything like that. I think that's something I really want to focus on this year.
Cool, man. That's awesome, man. Yeah, look forward to kind of seeing how that progresses from a fan standpoint. So, you mentioned partnerships. You have the partnership with Hyperlite. What do you think about this stuff? I mean, I've used it. I think it's pretty solid. I used it on a workout yesterday. I haven't used it racing yet. Actually, I ran CIM with it, but I mean, I haven't used it in a long mountain race. So what are your thoughts? And,
yeah, obviously, I'm a huge fan. Historically, I've really struggled with nutrition, and it hasn't necessarily been like GI issues, which is the crazy thing. It's been kind of a gag reflex just to taking in gels and like sticky liquids and stuff. I just can't do it 3 or 4 hours into a race. And that's where Hyperlite's been amazing, because it's in liquid format, and I got a bunch of like sodium loss testing done this year. The amount of sodium in a normal serving of Hyperlite fits exactly with what I need per hour. The amount of carbs has been like, never in my mind did I think I was ever going to be able to consume 100 grams of carbs an hour. And, here I am drinking Hyperlite, and no issues at all. So I think a lot of the unlock for me was finding something in liquid form. And then, something I think, having the amount of carbs and calories, and then also having like the consistency is good, and then having the sodium has just been game changing for me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I haven't gone more than I think probably 6 hours on it, but I would assume that like you know, I get past 6 hours, and if I am having a hard time just doing liquids, it's going to be a great tool to have like to sip on while I'm also eating like real food or whatever it is, you know, that I'm consuming. But they have a lot of great stuff coming, you know, like down the pipeline that they're working on too, that I'm excited to kind of be a part of. And you know, the biggest thing, like I said, is the guys behind the company and their families are just incredible people. And so when you're working with somebody that you really value and trust, and you know, you just feel it in your bones that like these are good people, it makes such a difference. Like
Totally.
So that's where I think, you know, the stoke is high for me.
Yeah. Great people over there. Yeah. Just authentic, you know, really are doing it for the love. But then I'm also the early feedback has been great on their product. So that's awesome. And I'm excited just to see how it progresses, and hopefully there'll be more feedback. So that'll be cool to see. Let's shift back to your racing. What does 2025 look like? Your race calendar look like?
So right now, I mean, it could change a little bit. I don't know. But right now, it's Big Alta 50K is where I'm going to open up.
Nice.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to probably train right through it. And then we'll have Canyons 100K, and then High Lonesome 100 miler, which is my dream race. I'm so stoked I got into that, and I'm getting to run that. So that's going to be like the race I'm most focused on this year. And then I'll probably end the year at Run Rapid 100.
Cool.
So I'm going to probably stay in Colorado for most of the big races this year, and take a year off from being in Europe. I think, you know, I've been going out there for the last 5 years, and it'll be nice to stay at home and get some good practice in the mountains. So when I do go back out to Chamonix, we're going to go and try to win the damn thing rather than just like try and get like top 10 or finish. So
yeah, that'll be awesome, man. That's a strong schedule. Yeah, I'll be towing the line at 100K. Hopefully I stay healthy in this training block, but that's the plan. So
awesome, man. That'll be so cool. Yeah. Hopefully we get some good weather.
yeah, for sure. Not too hot, not any crazy like winds or anything, you know, torrential downpours or anything like that. So we'll see. Cool, man. Let's end with that quote that I was talking about. I just felt really impactful. So I'll read it here, and then just if you want to share your thoughts on this, like where you were going with this. So it's from The Intersection of Hardship. So one of your more recent posts, it says, life and running both require resilience, patience, and the ability to listen to your inner voice. When we push ourselves physically, we often reveal hidden mental and emotional strengths. We become familiar with our limits and learn when to challenge them and when to respect them. So I thought that was super impactful. Like it really spoke to me. So yeah, you want to touch on where you're going with that?
Yeah, I think, I guess the best way to put it is like, for anybody listening, we're all runners, I'm sure of it. So put yourself in a position where you're late in a race and you're just at that point where it's like, you know, everything's telling you to kind of stop, like you're at your limits essentially. What mentally you think, you know, you feel like you're at your limits, but something can, you know, there's always something deep in there that tells you can keep going. And it's up to you to kind of make that decision on, is it safe or is it good to keep going? And I think there's a really huge parallel with that in life, with a lot of things. And I've had a few things, you know, throughout my life, and probably specifically when I was writing that you know, you kind of come to that crossroads and you have to think like, you know, is it time to just kind of like sit in the chair and wait for somebody to pick me up at the aid station and DNF at this point? Or like, is it safe to push through? And like, if I do push through, what is that going to do for me? Is it going to be a good thing or a bad thing? And that's where I think a lot of people get hung up in racing and in life is we always try and push through. And sometimes pushing through is not necessarily the best thing to be doing for long-term health or for your mental state. And sometimes it's the best thing. So the problem with that is you're left with like a decision to be made in a very short amount of time. And those decisions have huge impacts. And so that's kind of where I was coming from when I wrote that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. It's like the embrace the struggle, the grow through hardship type of a deal. And like just the experience, like you saying, like like the right decision might not always be pushing through, but sometimes it has to be that. So, and there's so much growth in that. And that's the type of stuff that I'm talking about that just kind of fuels me. So thanks for that, man. I appreciate that.
I appreciate your reading.
Yeah. Cool, Matt. Well, hey, we'll get these interviews are usually about 30 minutes long. So cool. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. And man, like I said, I'll be rooting for you and look forward to meeting with you at in Phoenix here in a few weeks. So
yeah, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And thanks again for having me on. This has been great.
All right. Thanks, Matt.